Good day, girls. Today we'll start with Science and Technology, Part 1, Chapter 5, Heat. Topics to be covered under this chapter is latent heat, regulation, anomalous behavior of water, specific heat capacity, dew point, and humidity. Let me ask you a question. What is the difference between heat and temperature? Heat is a form of energy. It is a measure of degree of hotness or coldness of an object. SI unit of heat is Joule. SI unit of temperature is Kelvin. Two bodies of different materials having same quantity of heat can be at different temperature. Two bodies at same temperature can have different quantities of heat. Heat is measured by using calorimeter. Heat can be measured using a thermometer. Girls, I would like you to learn this answer by heart. Second question, based on your previous knowledge, what are the different ways of heat transfer? Any guesses? Yes, the different ways in which heat can be transferred are conduction, convection, and radiation. I'm sure you have done this in detail in the lower class. Now, in the previous standard, we have learned about heat and different types of heat transfer. We have also performed few experiments related to expansion and contraction of solids, liquids, and gases. We have learnt about the difference between heat and temperature. We have also seen how temperature is measured using a thermometer. Concepts like latent heat or phase transformation, anomalous behavior of water, dew point, humidity, specific heat capacity, etc. are related to certain phenomena experienced by us in our day-to-day life. Let us learn more about these concepts. We first begin with latent heat. It's a simple experiment, very easy to understand. Pay attention. Observe the figure carefully. Now, take few pieces of ice in a glass beaker. Insert the bulb of a thermometer in ice and measure its temperature. Put the beaker on a stand and heat the ice using a burner. Record the temperature using the thermometer after every minute. As the ice is heated, it starts melting. Stir the mixture of ice and water. Continue the heat even after ice starts melting. Now, in the end, you can draw a graph of temperature versus time. I'm sure you've understood this experiment, girls. Now, observe the graph over here. You can see that when we begin the experiment, it is seen that the temperature of the ice is 0 degree. When we begin 0 minute, temperature is 0. As we are increasing the time, say 1 minute, 2 minute, 4 minute. So we have heated for the first 4 minutes. There is no rise in temperature. The temperature is yet showing 0. Now of the graph can be divided into three parts. AB, which is constant, again a straight line. Then you have BC and then you have CD. So here we begin with AB. This AB part of the graph does not show any rise in temperature. Temperature is marked on the y-axis. The line AB represents conversion of ice into water at constant temperature. Which constant temperature? You can see at the graph it is 0 degree. The constant temperature AB is 0. We are supplying heat continuously. Now heat is a form of energy. Energy has to be utilized. This heat energy that we are supplying does not rise the temperature of ice. But then what is it doing? It is simply used to convert the solid ice into the liquid water. That means there is a change of state from solid to liquid. So this temperature at 0 degrees, there is a change of state taking place, and that is what the heat is doing over here. If you read the textbook page 62, the last para, line AB represents conversion of ice into water at constant temperature. When ice is heated, it melts at 0 degrees and converts into water at this constant temperature, which is this constant temperature is nothing but 0 degrees. The ice absorbs heat energy during this transition, and the absorption of energy continues till all the ice converts in water. The temperature remains constant during this transition. Okay, so we have another definition over here, melting point of ice. What does it say? the constant temperature at which ice converts into water is called as the melting point of ice. Girls, please learn this definition. It could be asked for 1 mark in the exam. Okay. Now, what is happening during this transition from solid to liquid? Here, the heat that we are supplying is utilized in weakening the bonds between the atoms or molecules in the solid and transform it into the liquid phase. So, here let us be more specific in our definition. Here we are going to talk about the heat energy. Okay. So, we have another definition over here. The heat energy absorbed at constant temperature during the transformation of solid into liquid is called as latent heat of fusion. Remember this definition. The moment you hear latent heat of fusion, it is the heat energy that is absorbed to convert a substance from the solid phase to the liquid phase. Now we need to talk about how much of heat energy does a substance require. Obviously, that will also depend upon the quantity of heat. So let us be more specific to explain the latent heat of fusion. Read the next definition down. The amount of heat energy absorbed at constant temperature by a unit mass of a solid to convert into a liquid phase is called as specific latent heat of fusion. So all this is happening between 0 minute to 4 minute and the temperature remains constant. Once all the ice has melted, and this approximately takes 4 minutes. Again, it depends upon how much ice we have taken. Okay. Once all the ice has melted, and then when you heat, you can see there is a steady rise in temperature. The BC part represents that the water is getting heated up. Okay. And then the temperature rises from 0 degree to 100 degree. Again, when the temperature remains 100, you can see there is no further rise in temperature. The CD is again a straight line over here. It is constant. There is no rise in temperature. Now, what is happening over here? What is again the heat doing over here? Now, again the heat supplied over here is trying to weaken the bond further between the atoms and molecules and trying to convert the liquid, that is water, into the vapor state. So, the heat energy supplied at this point is trying to convert the liquid into the gaseous state. Okay. The constant temperature at which the liquid transforms into the gaseous state is called as the boiling point of liquid. When we are going to talk about heat, how much of heat is absorbed? The heat energy absorbed at constant temperature during the transformation of liquid into gas is called as the latent heat of vaporization. Now, we already learned what is latent heat of fusion. So, the moment we say latent heat of fusion, you should understand it is conversion of solid to liquid state, and when you say latent heat of vaporization, it is liquid to solid state. Again, when we are talking in terms of quantity, how much of heat energy is required and how much is the mass of the substance. Okay, we have the next definition. The amount of heat energy absorbed at constant temperature by unit mass of a liquid to convert into gaseous phase is called as specific heat of vaporization. Girls, we have learned about 6 definitions. Please learn all these definitions and please learn the graph. We might be giving you the graph and questions could be asked regarding, we would ask you what does AB represent, what BC represent, and so it is very important for you to learn and understand the graph. Now look at the table. The table here, the first column gives us the melting point and boiling point and specific heat of fusion, latent heat of fusion and vaporization. If you look at water, the melting point is 0 and boiling point is 100. Melting point and boiling point is not the same for all the substances. Different substances have different melting and boiling point, different latent heat of fusion and different latent heat of vaporization. If you see copper, the melting point is 1083. Boiling point is 2562. Ethyl alcohol, it is minus 117 and boiling point is 78 and so on. Kindly go through this table. The questions related to latent heat. Now we have learned about solid getting converted to liquid and liquid getting converted to gaseous state. Now, is the concept of latent heat applicable during transformation of gaseous phase to liquid phase and from liquid phase to solid phase? The answer is yes. It is applicable in both the cases. The heat energy will be evolved from the substrate. Where does the latent heat go during this transformation? It is released into the atmosphere. We go to the next part, that is regulation. Okay, now before that, I want you to think, okay, and imagine, have you ever seen a person who makes ice gola? You must have seen he takes a ice slab and he shreds the ice. He holds the shredded ice in his hand and tries to press it between the palm of his hand, and then you see that it converts into a one solid ball. Now how does it happen? You can try this at home. You can take 2 pieces of ice. You can put the small pieces, you can freeze it in your refrigerator. Take 2 pieces of ice and try to keep it between the palm of your hand and press. You will notice that they will join one another. Now why does it happen? To understand this better, let us perform a small experiment. It is as shown in the figure over here. You will require a small slab of ice, a thin wire, and 2 identical weights. This experiment, I am sure also you can do it at home. Okay. So the arrangement of the experiment is, put a slab of ice on a stand as shown in the figure. Hang 2 equal weights on 2 ends of a metal wire and put the wire on the slab as shown in the figure. Okay. Now after some time, what do you observe? It is observed that the wire gradually penetrates the ice slab. After some time, the wire comes out of the lower surface of the ice slab. However, the ice slab does not break. Looks like magic, correct? But there's a lot of science in it. Let me explain you how does it happen. Now, you are adding equal weights to both the ends of the wire. So that part of the ice which is below the wire is under high pressure because of the weight. Once it is under high pressure, its melting point decreases. That means ice will melt at 0 degree Celsius. So when the atoms and molecules, that part of the ice is below the wire, due to high pressure, its melting point decreases and it gets converted into water. And therefore it leaves way for the wire to penetrate through the water. And therefore the water now, that part of the water which was displaced is above the wire. It is released of the pressure of the wire and therefore it again gets converted into ice because the pressure is released. Now there is another layer of ice which is below the wire under high pressure. Its melting point decreases and therefore the wire sinks further. It replaces the water. Now the water is above the wire, gets converted into solid. In this way, every time this wire is above a new layer of ice which decreases its melting point and it turns into water, and in this way the wire is able to pass through the entire slab and comes out from the lower level without dividing the slab into 2 equal parts. This phenomena in which ice converts to liquid due to applied pressure and then reconverts to ice once the pressure is removed is called as regulation. I hope you have understood this. A few questions related to this. In the above experiment, the wire moves through the ice slab. However, the ice slab does not break. Why? I'm sure you will be able to write this answer. Anyway, I'll explain it once again. The melting point of ice becomes lower than 0 degree due to pressure. This means that at 0 degree, the ice gets converted into water. As soon as the pressure is removed, the melting point is restored to 0 degree and water gets converted into ice again. Second question, is there any relationship of latent heat with regulation? Yes, the amount of heat energy absorbed or released during the change of state is called latent heat. The phenomena in which ice converts to liquid due to applied pressure and then reconverts it to ice once the pressure is removed is called regulation. Since there are change of states during regulation process, latent heat is one of the factors affecting regulation. The third question, what you know that as we go higher than the sea level, the boiling point of water decreases. What would be effect on the melting point of solid? As we go higher than the sea level, the atmospheric pressure decreases. So decrease in atmospheric pressure will increase the melting point of ice. We go to the next part of the chapter, anomalous behavior of water. Now in general, now you have learned in the lower class the substance expands on heating, solid expands on heating, liquid expands on heating, gases expands on heating, and you have done experiments related to it probably in the 7th or in the 8th chapter. Okay. So in general, we say when a liquid is heated up to a certain temperature, it expands, and when it cools, it contracts. But here water behaves in a very special and exceptional way. If we heat water from 0 degree to 4 degree, it contracts instead of expanding. Let me explain that statement once again. Now you know liquid expands on heating. Now imagine we have water at 0 degrees and we are heating it, say to 1 degree, 2 degree and so on. So according to the concept that liquid expands on heating, when we have water at 0 degree and we are heating it, and when the temperature reaches 1 degree, we expect the water to expand. But that does not happen. It contracts. Again from 2 degrees to 3 degrees when we are heating, it contracts further. Again from 2 degree to 3 degree and 3 degree to 4 degree, it keeps on contracting. That means from 0 degree to 4 degree, where we are supplying heat to increase the temperature, instead of expanding, this water contracts. So it is a special behavior of water we see over here. And once after 4 degree, we heat further to 5 degree, 6 degree, then it starts to expand. So the expansion of water takes place after 4 degree. Between 0 and 4 degree, instead of expanding, it contracts. Now let us try to look it in the other way. Suppose the temperature of the water has reached 8 degree. Now we are cooling it. According to what we have learned, substance contracts on cooling. Liquid contracts on cooling. So water also has to contract on cooling. So when we are cooling from 8 degree to 7 degree, it will contract. From 7 degree to 6 degree, it will contract. From 6 to 5, it will contract. From 5 degree to 4 degree, it will contract. But when you are cooling it from 4 degree to 3 degree, instead of contracting, it will expand. Again from 3 degree to 2 degree, it will expand. Again from 2 to 1 and 1 to 0 degree, it will expand. So there is a behavioral problem with water between 0 degree to 4 degree. This exceptional behavior of water is known as anomalous behavior of water. We can explain this with the help of a graph. Suppose if I take 1 kg of water, okay, which is at 0 degrees Celsius, you can see on the y-axis we have the volume of water and on the x-axis we have the temperature. So we take nearly 1 kg of water which is at 0 degrees. Okay, so you can see as we are cooling it, the volume decreases till 4 degree. And then when we are heating it further, you can see the volume increases. So for the first 4 degree, from 0 to 4, the volume decreases. And when we are heating it further, it increases. So this tells us that the volume of the water, instead of increasing from 0 to 4, the volume decreases. And then the volume increases after 4 degrees. This can be again well explained with the help of Hope's apparatus. To explain the exceptional or anomalous behavior of water, you can see an apparatus set up in the figure, and along with it you can see the graph. Let me explain you the construction of this apparatus. This apparatus is known as Hope's apparatus. A flat bowl is attached. Can you see this flat bowl? Yes. Is attached to a cylindrical container. There is a provision to attach two thermometer. This thermometer is T2 and this thermometer is T1. The flat ball on the cylindrical container. There is a provision to attach thermometers to measure temperature T2 and below to measure temperature T1. The flat ball on the thermometer container. The water is filled in the cylindrical container. This is the cylindrical container here. Can you see this? It is filled with water. And water is filled with a cylindrical container and a mixture of ice and salt. This is a mixture of ice and salt. also known as a freezing mixture, is put in the flat bowl. Now during the study, now water in the we see water in this cylindrical container is 12 degrees. We can show here, we can see here 12 degrees. So water in this container is 12 degrees. Now during the study of anomalous behavior of water using Hope apparatus, temperature T1, that is temperature here, thermometer at the lower part, and T2 is recorded after every 30 seconds. The temperatures are plotted on the y-axis and the time in the x-axis. The graph can be seen over here. If you can understand the graph shows initially both the temperature T1 and T2 are identical. You can see both are at 12 degrees because we have taken water in this cylinder at 12 degrees. However, as time passes, you can see T1, now you can see T1 gradually decreasing down. It reaches 4 degree, I have not marked here, and then there is this temperature then touches the x-axis. But if you see T2, the temperature decreases very slowly. If you see T1, there is a sudden decrease in temperature for T1. Whereas T2, the temperature does not decrease very fast. But once it comes 4 degrees, you can see T2 sharply falls to 0. And then T1 then touches the x-axis. That means the temperature, once the temperature, I'll explain that when I'm explaining this Hope's apparatus. Okay, now why does this happen? Now you know that water is at 12 degrees. Now there is freezing mixture over here. We add ice and water. When we add ice and water, the temperature here is much below 0. It can go up to even -5 and -10. So the water here at the center of the cylindrical vessel, okay, gets cooled down. The temperature decreases. So water initially was 12 degree. Because of the freezing mixture, the temperature of the water at the center of the cylinder goes down. And when you're cooling it, you know, when liquid is heated, it expands, and when it cools, it contracts. So the liquid at the center of the cylinder contracts. That means its volume decreases. Now when its volume decreases, its density increases. You can use this formula to understand the concept. Density is equal to mass upon volume. You can write it down to understand. Density is equal to mass upon volume. So when volume decreases, density increases. So as the liquid at the center gets cooled down, its volume increases, density decreases. In simple words, I could say the water becomes a little heavy, so it tries to come at the bottom of the cylindrical vessel. So there is movement of water from the center to the base. So every time the water here gets cooled down, its volume increases, volume decreases, density increases, and it comes down. So the temperature of the water decreases very rapidly over here, whereas nothing is happening at the top over here. That is why we see in this graph that T1 rapidly shows decrease in temperature, because there is movement of cold water from the center to the lower part. Now this phenomena continues till the water reaches, you can see over here in this graph, there is a sharp decline in the temperature till it reaches 4 degrees. After that, it remains constant for some time and then it decreases. Now what is happening at 4 degrees? Once the temperature of the water here below reaches 4 degree, now due to anomalous behavior of water, the volume starts to increase. Once the volume starts to increase, its density decreases. So when the density of the water decreases, now instead of moving down, it will move up. Now the upper part, there is movement from the center to the upper part. And now here what happens? The temperature falls sharply. So here in the beginning, if you see, the temperature remains constant. After 4 degree, you can see after 4 degree for T1, T2, there is sudden drop in temperature. Whereas for T1, it remains constant and then it comes to 0. So if you see, T2 attains, or T2 becomes 0 first. T2 becomes 0 first and then T1. Okay. So here so let me conclude over here. However, once the temperature T1 of the lower part reaches 4 degree, it remains almost constant at that temperature. T2 decreases slowly to 4 degrees. Thereafter, T2 starts changing rapidly. It records 0 degree first, and after that, the lower temperature T1 records 0 degree temperature. The point of intersection of two curves show that the temperature of maximum density. I'm sure you have understood this. Okay. So what do we conclude? The behavior of water between the temperature from 0 degrees Celsius. It is 0 degrees Celsius, girls. It is not 0 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius is called as anomalous behavior of water. And at 4 degrees, it is 4 degrees Celsius, its volume is minimum. Now questions related to this. In the region with cold water, the aquatic plants and animals can survive even when the atmospheric temperature goes below 0 degree Celsius. Now the answer to this, in cold countries during winter, the temperature of air falls to 0 degrees or even below. As the temperature of air decreases, the water at the surface of the lake begins to contract, due to which its density increases. When the temperature of the water falls below 0 degrees due to its anomalous behavior, the water expands instead of contracting. As the temperature of water falls below 0 degrees, the water on the surface of the lake gets converted to ice. Since ice is a bad conductor of heat, the water below the ice layer continues to remain at 0 degrees even though the temperature of the air may fall below 0 degrees. Hence, due to the anomalous behavior of water, aquatic animals stay alive even when the temperature of the air falls below 0 degrees. The second question, in cold countries in winter, the pipes for water supply break and even rocks crack. Now during winter season in cold countries, the temperature of the atmosphere falls well below 0 degrees. Therefore, the temperature of water inside the pipeline also decreases. When the temperature of water falls below 4 degrees, it starts expanding instead of contracting due to anomalous behavior of water. Since there is no place for water to expand, it exerts tremendous pressure on the wall of the pipeline, causing them to burst. Hence, in winter, the pipeline carrying the water bursts in cold climate. Now we go to the next part of the chapter, dew point and humidity. Now you have already learned in the lower class that 71% of the earth is covered with water. There is water in the sea, oceans and rivers and dams, and there is, because of the heat of the sun, there is constant evaporation taking place. So constant evaporation leads to water vapor in the air. You have learnt in the lower class that air contains water vapor, and you have done experiments related to it to prove that air contains water vapor. And when we say the moisture in the air is called humidity. Now the next part, dew point. If you understand dew point over here, there are certain terms related. Unsaturated air, and we see air becomes saturated. Now to understand dew point, you need to understand the meaning of the word, what is saturated air and what is unsaturated air. To begin with, let me explain you with an example. Now take a glass of water. You can do this experiment at home also. Take a glass of water and take 1 spoon of salt, put it in the glass and stir it. It is seen that the salt dissolves in water. Take another spoon of salt, add it to glass and stir it, it dissolves. So you keep on adding salt to the glass of water, it keeps on dissolving. That means water has a capacity to dissolve salt in it. You keep on adding glass, maybe you have already finished 5 spoons of salt and water. Maybe you are adding the 6th spoon now and you keep stirring it, the salt does not dissolve. That means that quantity of water at that given temperature, you can see, has got a limited capacity to hold or dissolve salt in it. Now you want to increase the capacity of salt to dissolve in water. What can be done? You can heat the water. Suppose the water was at 25 degrees. Now you are heating it to say 40 degrees. you see the salt, the sixth spoon of salt what you put, which was not dissolving, will dissolve immediately now. You can add another spoon of salt and check, it will again dissolve. Maybe you are adding 2 more spoons, and each time you are adding, it will dissolve. And again a point might come where it is not dissolving, you can further increase. That means, you see, by increasing the temperature of water, its capacity to dissolve salt increases. At this stage we say that the water is saturated. So in the beginning when we did the experiment, I said when you added 5 spoons, it was able to dissolve. It was not able to dissolve the 6th spoon. That means we say the water is saturated with salt. That is known as saturated salt solution. But you can increase the saturated salt solution in 2 ways. One is by increasing the temperature of the water, you are increasing its capacity to dissolve more and more salt. Another way to increase the saturation is, again you begin now, you have to do this experiment once again. You take the same quantity of water. Maybe I said in the beginning it was at 25 degrees Celsius. Now what do? Is you decrease the temperature of water. You bring it say to 5 degrees. In the beginning, with the same quantity of water, you were able to dissolve 5 spoons. Now when you are decreasing the temperature, maybe with just 2 spoons of salt, the solution is saturated. The water is saturated. That means you can increase the saturation by increasing the temperature, or by decreasing the temperature, you can do it. Okay. Now you explain this. Now if once you have understood what is saturation, you will be able to understand in terms of humidity. Now for a given volume of air at a specific temperature. Now we did with water. We took a glass of water and we took a constant temperature, say at 25. Now with respect to air, for a given volume of air at a specific temperature, there is a limit how much water vapor the air can contain. If the amount exceeds this limit, the excess vapor will convert into water droplets. When the air contains maximum possible water vapor, it is said to be saturated with vapor at that temperature. The amount of vapor needed to saturate the air depends on the temperature of the air. I repeat once again. When the air contains maximum possible water vapor, it is said to be saturated with vapor at that temperature. The amount of water vapor needed to saturate it means, suppose the air is yet not saturated. Now how much of air you require to saturate will depend upon the temperature. If the temperature of the air is at a higher level, you will require more water vapor. If the temperature of the air is less, it will require less water vapor to saturate it. If the air temperature is low, it will require less vapor to saturate. Now for example, if the temperature of the air is 40 degrees, it can contain 49 gram of water vapor per kilogram of dry air without condensation. If the water vapor exceeds this limit, the additional vapor will condense. However, if the temperature of the air is 20 degrees Celsius, it can contain only 14.7 gram of water vapor per kg of dry air without condensing. If the vapor contained in the air is less than the maximum limit, then the air is said to be unsaturated. I hope you have understood what is saturation and unsaturation. Now let us define the dew point. Suppose unsaturated air at a certain temperature is taken and its temperature is decreased. A temperature is reached at which the air becomes saturated with vapor. This temperature is known as dew point. Please learn this definition of dew point. Now the vapor content in the air is measured using a physical quantity called as absolute humidity, which is measured in terms of kg per meter cube. Now the ratio of the actual mass of water vapor content in the air for a given volume and temperature to that required to make the air saturated with vapor at that temperature is called as relative humidity. Please read this definition again to understand better. The ratio, that is the actual mass of water vapor. For example, in a given volume, there is some mass of water vapor present in it at a given temperature. Now, how much of water vapor do you require it to saturate it with water vapor at that temperature is called as the relative humidity. Now this ratio, if you multiply by 100, you will get relative humidity. If you see relative humidity, the formula, the actual mass of water vapor contained in the air in a given volume. That means for a given volume of air at a given temperature, you need to calculate how much of water vapor is present. Then you have to see how much of water vapor is required to saturate air. If you take this ratio and when you multiply by 100, you will get relative humidity. Learn this definition by heart. The relative humidity at dew point is 100%. The statement, girls, you must learn it by heart. When you substitute the values in this formula of relative humidity, and after calculating, if the answer is 60%, we say that the air is humid. And if the answer is less than 60%, we say that the air is dry. You must be heard about people talking about today the climate is very humid. Today the climate is very dry. Now what do you understand by that? Normally now during the summer or before the rainy season, you feel you sweat a lot. You say the climate is very humid because it contains lot of water vapor. The water vapor content in the air is more than 60 degrees. But after the rainy season, when we have winter, you must be experiencing that the climate is very dry. You don't sweat. In fact, you need to apply a lot of moisturizer on your skin because after the rains, the moisture content in the air is decreased. There is less water vapor in the air, less than 60%. When air has got less than 60% of water vapor, we say that it is very dry. Okay. Now during winter season, you may have observed a white trail at the back of a flying plane in a clear sky. As the plane flies, the vapor released by the aeroplane engine condenses and forms cloud. If the surrounding air is having more relative humidity, it takes a longer time for the white trail formed by the condensation of vapor to disappear. If the relative humidity of the surrounding air is less, either the size of the white trail may be small or it may not get formed. Now observe this picture. You can see three pictures over here. The first one, you can see a glass where it contains cold drink. Another is a window pane, and in the below one you can see the leaf. In everywhere you can see water droplets on it. Now drops of water can be observed on the outer surface of the bottle. In the same way, we observe the leaves of plants, the window glass of a vehicle in the early morning. We see water droplets collected on the surface. Through these two observations, we sense the presence of water vapor in the atmosphere. When air cools due to decrease in temperature, it becomes saturated with water vapor. As a result, the excess water vapor gets converted into tiny droplets. This dew point temperature is decided by the amount of water vapor in the air. You can do this experiment also at home. You can take a glass and fill it with cold water and keep it on the table. After some time, you will see water dripping from the outer side of the glass, and you can see water droplets even on the table. Now, how does that happen? Now, air contains water vapor, we have studied. We cannot see the water vapor. But when the air touches the cooler surface of the glass, what happens? Its temperature decreases. Air becomes at that point saturated with water vapor. It attains dew point at that temperature, and that excess water vapor condenses into water droplet. Okay, girls, you can try this experiment at home. So these two experiments, we have already finished. We sense the presence of water vapor in the atmosphere. When air cools due to decrease in temperature, it becomes saturated with water vapor. As a result, the excess water vapor gets converted into tiny droplets. The dew point temperature is decided by the amount of vapor in the air. Now we go to the next part, that is unit of heat. You need to learn all these things by heart. The unit of heat are joule in the SI unit, calorie in the CGS unit. The amount of heat necessary to raise the temperature 1 gram of water by 1 degree. Girls, it is 1 degree, not 10. It is 1 degree Celsius, from 14.5 degrees Celsius to 15.5 degrees Celsius is called 1 calorie heat. Similarly, the amount of heat necessary to raise the temperature of 1 kg of water by 1 degree, again it is 1 degree Celsius, from 14.5 degrees Celsius to 15.5 degrees Celsius is called 1 kilocalorie heat. Now it is clear that 1 kilocalorie is 1000 calorie. We go to the next part, that is specific heat capacity. Now what you can see in the picture is a wax block. Can you see wax block? Here you can see the melted wax. Before we start the experiment, we take a one thick wax layer. Okay, we take 3 metal ball, that is iron, copper and lead of equal mass. Very important, we have to take this 3 spheres of metal, that is iron, copper and lead of equal mass. We have to put all the 3 spheres in boiling water in a beaker for some time. Then we have to take the 3 spheres of water. All the 3 spheres will be at 100 degrees because the water was boiling at 100 degrees Celsius. Put them immediately into the thick slab of water. Now note the depth that each of the sphere goes into the wax. Now before we start the explanation, the procedure was, we had taken 3 different metal ball but of the same mass. We had subjected them to boiling water, that is 100 degrees, for the same amount of time. But when we take out these metal balls and put them on the wax layer, we can see that iron has penetrated the deepest and lead has penetrated the least, and copper in between both iron and lead. Now why is that so? The mass of the ball is same. It was subjected to same amount of heat. Now the iron was able to penetrate deeper because it was able to give more heat compared to lead, because wax, even with a little rise in temperature, it starts melting. So the iron ball was able to penetrate the deepest because it was able to melt more wax compared to lead, and iron was able to melt more wax because it was able to give more heat compared to lead, and that is why iron was able to melt more wax. Now the reason is why it was able to melt or give out more heat, because it absorbed more heat. I'll explain this once again. Iron was able to melt more wax because it gave out more heat. Lead was able to melt less wax because it gave out less heat. Now iron gave out more heat, lead gave less heat. Both were at 100 degrees. But iron was able to give more heat because maybe it absorbed more heat, and lead absorbed less heat. So this is what we have to understand. So though iron, copper and lead were subjected to boiling water at 100 degrees for the same time, the amount of heat absorbed by all these 3 were not the same. Iron absorbed maximum heat or more heat compared to copper, and copper was able to absorb more heat compared to lead. That is why iron was able to give out more heat than copper, and copper was able to give out more heat compared to lead. That is why they all did not penetrate the same depth. So this gives rise to a property. That means these metals had an inbuilt property in them. Okay, this property in them, that is in which they could absorb the heat, is called as specific heat property. I will repeat it once again. These metals had a property in them which determines the amount of heat absorbed by a sphere is different for different spheres. This property is called as the specific heat capacity. You need to learn this definition. The amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of a unit mass of an object by 1 degree. Girls, it is 1 degree. 1 degree Celsius is called specific heat capacity of a substance. Now if you look back at this experiment, first the metal ball absorbed heat. When they were put in the boiling water, they absorbed heat. When they absorbed heat, we could say there was a rise in temperature. Later, when they were put in the wax, they gave out heat. Okay, so these things you must remember to understand the next part. Now the unit, the specific heat capacity is denoted by the letter C. The SI unit of specific heat is joule per kg degree Celsius. This kg is printed down, girls. It is kg, joule per kg degree Celsius, and the CGS system is kilogram per, it is calorie per gram degree Celsius. Okay. Now the specific heat of an object is C. If I say the specific heat is C, mass of the object is m, and the temperature of the object raised is delta T. Delta T means raise in temperature, degree Celsius. The heat absorbed by the object is given by m, mass of the object, into C, specific heat of the object, into delta T, that is rise in temperature. Now in case of the iron, okay, when we put them in hot water, it absorbed it. So how much of heat has it absorbed? If you have to calculate, when we put the metal ball into the boiling water, each of the metal ball has absorbed heat. Now to how much of heat has been absorbed, we have to use this formula, m into C into T. That is mass of the object. If you are taking iron, mass of the iron, specific heat of iron, and how much, if the temperature of the ball say was 50 degree, now it is 100 degree, so how much has the temperature been raised up. Okay, so this formula will give you how much of heat it has absorbed. Now this metal ball was then put on the wax layer, then they started to give out heat. Again, the next way, if you see, in the same way, the specific heat, okay, the mass object, in the same way, if the specific heat, in the same way, specific heat of an object is C, mass of the object is m, and if the temperature of the object is decreased, now when they are giving, now see girls, when these metal balls were put in the wax, it gave out temperature, so the temperature of the ball will decrease, and how much has it lost heat energy, again will be given by the same formula, m into C into delta T. So we have same formula over here, m into C into delta T, to calculate how much heat it has absorbed, again m into C into T to calculate how much of heat it is given out. Only in this case here delta T will mean raise in temperature, here delta T means decrease in temperature. So by using this formula, we can calculate the amount of heat energy absorbed by an object or the amount of heat energy given out by an object. For this, we are supposed to know the value of specific heat. Now different substance has got different specific heat. Page 68 of your textbook, I have given you certain specific heat of substance. Please kindly go through it. We go to the next part of the chapter, heat exchange. Now you know that water flows from a higher level to a lower level. You don't require energy to bring water from a higher level to lower level. You have learned in current electricity last year, electric potential. There is always flow of electric potential from a higher electric potential to a lower electric potential. We will be again doing it in the next chapter, current electricity. Same way, heat also transfers from a higher temperature to a lower temperature. Whenever you fall sick, your mother must have kept a strip of water, a strip of cloth dipped in cold water and on your forehead, just to remove the heat. There is a heat transfer from the forehead into the cold cloth, and therefore the temperature of the body comes down. Okay, so here we have a box of heat resistant material. You can see this box over here. It is heat resistant. What does it mean? That means the inside heat cannot go out and the outside heat cannot come in. Inside this heat resistant material, you can see there are two objects. One is a hot object, one is a cold object. Both are kept in contact with each other. Obviously, the hot object will be at a higher temperature, the cold object will be at a lower temperature. When these two are kept in contact, it is seen that there is a flow of energy from the hot object to the cold one. There is a flow of heat energy from the hot object to the cold object. And how long will this transfer of energy take place? Till both of them shows the same temperature. So one is losing heat, the other is gaining heat. The hot object loses heat energy, the cold object gains heat energy. That is the principle of the exchange of heat energy. Heat lost by the hot object is equal to heat gained by the cold object. This is called as the principle of heat energy, heat exchange. Now here we have the picture of a calorimeter. I am sure you have done this also in the lower class. Can you understand the construction of the calorimeter? Now here you can see there is a vessel over here. There is a liquid in this vessel. There are two, and this vessel over here is kept in another box. This is an insulated box. Heat cannot go out and the heat cannot enter it. Okay, there are two openings of this calorimeter. One is to measure the temperature and the other is a stirrer to stir the mixture. So there is heat exchange taking place. No heat leaves out and no outside heat comes in away. This calorimeter is used to study the transfer of heat from one object to another object. The measurement of specific heat, a mixing method and calorimeter. The specific heat of an object can be measured using mixing method. For this, calorimeter is used. You have learnt about calorimeter in the previous standard. If a hot solid object is put in water in a calorimeter, heat exchange between the hot object and the water and calorimeter starts. This continues till the temperature of the solid object, water and the calorimeter becomes equal. I repeat girls, in the calorimeter we have taken a hot solid object. There is water in the calorimeter. So the moment you start this experiment, the hot object loses heat. It gives out heat to the water and to the calorimeter. Therefore, what can we say? Read the first line. Heat lost by the solid object is equal to the heat gained by water in the calorimeter plus heat gained by the calorimeter. That means the solid object is losing its heat, which is gained by the water in the calorimeter and the calorimeter. The second one over here, heat lost by the solid object is, let it be denoted as Q, is equal to mass of the solid object into specific heat into decrease in temperature. Remember the formula we did, M into C into delta T. That same we are applying over here. Now here the solid object loses heat. How much of heat has it lost? We are going to use the formula M into C into delta T. That is mass of the solid object into the specific into decrease in temperature. Now this heat is absorbed by the water in the calorimeter plus the calorimeter. So the water has gained heat. We represent that by Q1. How much of heat has it gained? Again it is using the formula M into C into delta T. That is mass of the water into specific heat into, here we have rise in temperature. Here we have decrease in temperature because the solid object is losing heat. Here water is gaining heat, so we are saying increase in its temperature. Now heat lost by the solid object is also gained by the calorimeter. Okay. So its specific heat, how much of heat has it gained is represented by Q2. That is mass of the calorimeter into specific heat into again increase in temperature. So here you see the solid object decreases its heat. The liquid increases its heat, and here the calorimeter also increases its heat. We have represented them by Q, Q1 and Q2. So we conclude the heat lost by the hot object is equal to the heat gained by the calorimeter plus heat gained by water, which we summarize it by writing this formula Q is equal to Q2 plus Q1. We can also say as Q is equal to Q1 plus Q2. So we have learned this formula over here. Heat gained or heat lost can be written as M into C into delta T. The delta T can be rise in temperature, can be decrease in temperature. Okay, using this equation, if the specific heat of water and the calorimeter are known, the specific heat of the solid object can be calculated. Girls, I hope you have understood this chapter. Kindly go through it again. Okay, if any queries, you can ask me later on. We have done with the chapter. You can start writing the question answers into your notebook. Kindly make separate notebooks for Science 1 and Science 2. Thank you.